Mr. Darcy?
Miss Elizabeth?
I finally read Pride and Prejudice. I expected to enjoy it. I thought I would find it charming, maybe even butterfly-inducing. But what I didn't expect was for it to completely reframe how I think about romance. Pride and Prejudice was written in 1813, over 200 years ago, but it feels shockingly fresh. It delivers a deeper, more satisfying love story than most modern romance novels that I've read recently. So after finishing the book, I came to the conclusion that Jane Austen set the gold standard for romance, one that we're still struggling to reach today. So in this video, I'll be breaking down what Jane Austen understood about romance, why it still works 200 years later, and what that reveals about what's missing in most modern romance novels today. One of the most famous scenes in Pride and Prejudice is this one.
I don't understand.
I love you. Most ardently.
The grand love confession from Mr. Darcy. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. Or is it? Elizabeth rejects him. This is a pivotal moment in the story and it reveals what Jane Austen believes romance requires. Elizabeth rejects Darcy because he's proud, because he looks down on her family, because he interfered in her sister's happiness.
From the first moment I met you, your arrogance and conceit, your selfish disdain for the feelings of others made me realize that you were the last man in the world I could ever be prevailed upon to marry.
This line is very telling. Elizabeth is rejecting him for his character. Consider how rare this is in romance novels. The heroine sees flaws in the love interest that she cannot condone, so she rejects him despite the attraction that she feels. This rejection says something very fundamental about how Austen builds romance. Elizabeth does feel attracted to Darcy. The chemistry is there. Up until the proposal scene, they have spent half the book circling each other, trading barbs, matching wit, and noticing one another in ways no one else does. Elizabeth is undeniably curious and drawn to Mr. Darcy, but his pride and arrogance are barriers that prevent any further development. Elizabeth doesn't let attraction override her moral judgment. Austen makes it very clear, attraction by itself doesn't justify love. That might sound obvious, but if you read a lot of modern contemporary romance, you would know that it's not. So often, chemistry is treated as proof that the couple belongs together. If the spark is strong enough, the relationship is inevitable. We get things like instant love or instant lust. Flaws become softened, excused, or reframed to be part of the appeal. We get female leads who ignore the love interest's flaws because he's not like that with her, or he just needs someone to understand him. Sometimes we get the female lead who initially resists, but all of that progress goes down the drain because she stays close, sticking around to heal him or to wait for him to be ready to receive love. Pride and Prejudice doesn't have any of that. Elizabeth rejects Mr. Darcy because of how he behaves towards the people she loves. She points out his flaws and walks away. She doesn't linger or wait for him to improve. She doesn't stake her emotional future on his potential to be a good man. Narratively, this changes everything. By allowing the proposal to truly fail, Austen breaks the illusion of inevitability. Love isn't something that they're destined for. It's something that they have to become worthy of. And that makes their eventual reunion feel earned and satisfying. Notice what Austen does that is so narratively powerful. Love is rooted in character, not chemistry. Chemistry or attraction isn't enough for Elizabeth and Darcy's relationship to progress. Secondly, Darcy has real flaws that prevent Elizabeth from loving him. They aren't cosmetic. They aren't there to make him mysteriously attractive. They actively threaten the relationship. In many modern romances, the love interest flaws are softened. They are either more for the aesthetics, like being cold, reserved, or broody, or their internal doubts, like fear of being vulnerable or fear of intimacy. These are emotional hurdles. Darcy's pride is different. It's his worldview that Elizabeth cannot condone. Until that worldview changes, the relationship cannot work. Lastly, love is the result of transformation, not the catalyst. Darcy falling in love with Elizabeth doesn't change him. It doesn't automatically make him less flawed. What changes him is his realization that his behavior doesn't reflect the man that he believes himself to be. His transformation only begins when he starts to see himself clearly. And we see that process start in his letter to Elizabeth. In the letter, he doesn't suddenly abandon his pride or his reasoning for separating Bingley and Jane, but he does admit that he may have misjudged Elizabeth's sister. He writes, "Your sister's look and manners were open, cheerful, and engaging as ever, but without any symptom of particular regard, and I remain convinced from the evening's scrutiny. If you have not been mistaken here, I must have been in an error." The letter isn't full of repentance. His pride still holds firm here. He even defends his actions by writing, "I cannot blame myself for having done thus much." And it is done, however, and it was done for the best. On this subject, I have nothing more to say, no other apology to offer. He doesn't see the full error of his ways yet, but there's a beginning of self-reflection. Jane Austen doesn't flip the switch and turn Darcy into a different man because he fell in love. She lets us watch him wrestle with himself. And by the time you reach the second proposal, that inner wrestling has changed him.
"And your parents are in good health? And all your sisters?"
Yes, they're all in excellent health.
He is kind and respectful to the gardeners. He corrects his interference in Bingley's and Jane's relationship. He sees the devastation his silence caused on the matter of Mr. Wickham, and he takes responsibility for it, going out of his way to deal with the man he despises. And when Elizabeth thanks him, he says,
"You must know. Surely you must know it was all for you."
On the surface, that sounds like he changed for her. But we know that's not quite true because Darcy never intended anyone to find out what he had done for Lydia. Darcy didn't perform those good deeds to earn Elizabeth's regard. He did it because he wanted to be a better man. Elizabeth is Darcy's wake-up call. In the novel, he later tells her, "Your reproof, so well applied, I shall never forget." And that, I think, is the crucial difference between Jane Austen novels and what we typically see in contemporary romance. In Pride and Prejudice, love isn't the thing that transforms Darcy. He doesn't change because he loves her. He changes because he recognizes that he's wrong. Growth precedes love. And of course, Darcy isn't the only one that needs to grow. Elizabeth has to confront her own prejudice and vanity. Only when both of them have changed for the better is when love is possible. So I named 3 things that Pride and Prejudice does differently from an off-the-shelf modern romance. But what does all of this actually do to the story? When love is rooted in character, not chemistry, it matures attraction into respect. Elizabeth doesn't fall for Darcy because he's intense, rich, or magnetic. She falls for him because she sees his integrity and his capacity for self-reflection and growth. It's only when attraction deepens into respect that their romance blossoms. That is why their love feels so real. It's built on recognition of their true selves, not on tension or banter alone. They see each other clearly, they can criticize each other honestly, and they chose each other with their eyes wide open. That is why it feels like they're so perfect for each other. That's what compatibility looks like. When the character has real flaws, conflict actually changes the relationship. On the point of flaws, Jane Austen understood 2 things. First, the flaws have to be real. And secondly, the flaws have to actually prevent the relationship. In many modern novels, the flaws are almost decorative. They don't meaningfully interfere with the relationship. So the story ends up depending on external conflict, whether circumstance, timing, or the ever-popular misunderstanding, rather than internal growth. That shifts the entire focus of the romance. Now it becomes a story about 2 people in close proximity who finally get together after overcoming some external obstacle. That can be a good story, but that isn't a Pride and Prejudice level of romance. In Pride and Prejudice, the obstacle is who they are, and so the solution must be who they become. And that's what makes the romance feel earned. And lastly, love feels credible, not mechanical. If love is treated as the catalyst for change, if chemistry is enough, if attraction guarantees the relationship, then the journey can start to feel mechanical. In modern romances, it can sometimes feel like this. They are attractive, they are drawn to each other, circumstances pull them apart, circumstances push them back together, they reunite, but it all feels so expected. In Pride and Prejudice, we go into it knowing it's a romance. We know that they'll end up together. But what Jane Austen does differently is this. She shows us in the beginning why these two characters genuinely should not be together as they are. Darcy is too proud. Elizabeth is too prejudiced. It's in the title. Their flaws aren't there just to create temporary tension. They actually make the relationship impossible. So when they reunite, it doesn't feel like inevitable fate. Instead, it feels like two people who have done the work to change, and who they become fit together perfectly. That's the difference. Their love doesn't feel inevitable. It feels credible. We believe in it because we have seen the internal work happen. We believe that they will be happy together and stay together long after the final pages have turned. That is why their romance feels so satisfying. So we have the Holy Trinity, the three things that Jane Austen understood about how to build a romance. When stories skip these steps, we feel it. We see it all the time in modern romances that feel more formulaic, where it is trope first rather than character first, or when it focuses on chemistry rather than substance or character arcs. Pride and Prejudice feels so fresh because it refuses to shortcut the hardest part of the romance. It insists that love must be earned. And maybe that's why 200 years later, we're still reading it. The more I read and think about Pride and Prejudice, the more I see how deliberate and structurally brilliant it is. And I'm not done talking about it. I don't know how I've managed to avoid being exposed to it for such a long time. I've obviously been living under a rock, but I am now officially down the Jane Austen rabbit hole. So if you love Pride and Prejudice or Jane Austen's other works, I'll be exploring a lot more of it on this channel, so please do subscribe if you want to come down the rabbit hole with me. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye!